We'll just be talking about our decision process first. As we know, you guys will be applying shortly. For me, when I was a senior in high school applying to colleges, I kind of went a little overboard. I applied to over 20 schools, and it consisted of a mix between private and public schools. My goal in choosing university was pretty simple. I just wanted to go to the best ranking school with the least amount of debt possible. And I didn't really have a dream school, and I really didn't know much about college when I was applying. And so the reason why I went overboard was because I wanted as many options as possible. And I applied as both a math and economics major to most of the schools, as I thought those are the subjects I was doing the best in high school. And so obviously I ended up completely changing my major in college. So definitely don't worry too much about what you choose when you're applying. Anyways, in my decision process, I ended up choosing Rice over the other schools, mainly because of the financial aid package I received from them. They were extremely generous, and so I had always wanted to go out of state as well. Rice is located in Houston, Texas, and so I wanted just to experience full independence, and so it was a perfect match for me. So yeah, that's an extremely quick rundown of how I made my decision for college.
For me, I only applied to 5 UCs. I only applied to Berkeley, UCLA, UC Irvine, UCSD, and UCR, and physics and aerospace engineering because I wanted to stay in the West Coast, especially in my hometown in LA, in Koreatown. My ultimate goal was to go for the one with the best in-state tuition because I was really more into, I was more worried about my finances the most. So I didn't know much about private universities and their in-state tuitions or like out-of-state tuitions, and I just had like a general broad idea that it was going to be super expensive. But so I was pretty afraid of going to out-of-state universities, and I decided going to UCSD because like the campus tours I went to back in high school made me assume that every student was a surfer back then. But the campus and the surrounding location was beautiful, and all my high school friends decided on UCSD. So yeah.
All right. So first, we're going to be talking about college culture in general. And so when Paul and I were discussing and planning out this presentation, we realized that our universities had a lot of really big overarching differences. And these differences are really important for you to think about and consider when you're applying for college because your college experience will be shaped by these categories that you see on this Venn diagram. So keep in mind your personal preferences and what kind of qualities you prefer in a college while we go through and discuss these major differences. So as you see on the left, the red circle represents Rice, which is my university, and the blue circle represents UCSD, which is Paul's. And as you can see, there's 5 direct contrasts between our schools. So I'll be talking just about my experiences in the red circle, and then Paul will describe his from the blue circle. So first off, as we kind of mentioned, Rice University is a private school, which means it's not funded by the government. It's solely operated from private donors or endowments. And the first thing that comes to mind when people talk about private versus public is that private school does tend to have a higher tuition than public schools. However, the higher cost shouldn't scare you off from applying, as I found that in my personal experience, private schools tend to be more generous with financial aid, and they do have a lot more scholarships and grants than I would say I found from public schools. So definitely don't be afraid to apply and see what happens with the financial aid packages. I think that's what a lot of students are afraid of when they think of private schools, but I definitely would advise against that. And then secondly, private schools do tend to have smaller class sizes. My university had a little less than 4,000 undergrad students, which means there were less than 1,000 students in my year, which is considered an extremely small class size for college. This led to an extremely tight-knit, intimate community where literally everyone knew each other. It was almost like another high school experience, I would say. And I personally loved the smaller class size because I liked seeing friendly faces everywhere I went. I liked having a smaller class and being more engaged with other students. I also found it helpful to be closer to your professor when you're in a smaller class, as the professor tends to know everyone's name, you're always present, you're discussing a lot more one-on-one with them. And so I really preferred the smaller class size when I was looking into universities. But thirdly, even though there was, a small class size and the school was relatively small, we were located in the heart of a really big city, Houston, Texas, which is, I believe, the 4th biggest city in the United States. And so it didn't feel suffocating. It didn't feel like I was in a bubble all over again. I really liked being in a fast-paced big city. There was so much to do. The food scene was great. There was always events going on. So there was really never a boring weekend in a big city. I personally loved being in it, especially because I came from a super quiet suburban city, which is Irvine. And so I really like the change of pace and being in a big city. I think it's important to recognize that schools are located in different atmospheres. So if you're in a big city, it's going to be one experience. If you're in a small college town, it's going to be a completely different experience. And so make sure you keep in mind what you're looking for in the surroundings as well when you're considering universities. And so fourth, when you're considering colleges and the fun you want to have, schools tend to be categorized into two categories, either wet campus or dry campus. What that means is, for my college, it was a wet campus, and that means alcohol is allowed for students. We had two bars on campus that students would go to throughout the week. And so that's pretty rare, I think, for universities. And students had alcohol in their dorm rooms, and alcohol was pretty much everywhere for every event. And, you know, while they say you have to be 21 plus, and that's legally true, our administration was extremely laid back when it came to alcohol at events. And so that was always fun. Like, you didn't have to worry about getting caught or getting in trouble for it at all. So it was a very laid back atmosphere when it came to alcohol. Versus dry campus, as Paul will explain, is a bit different when it comes to policies regarding alcohol on campus. And then finally, for our last category, cost of living is incredibly different depending on where you choose to go to school, what state you're in, what city you're in. It's important to look up the cost of living of where you will end up going. Houston is fairly well known to be a very cheap, affordable city to live in, with cheap rent, gas, food prices, everything. And so, especially when compared to California prices for those things, it's important to consider your overall cost of living and how much you'll be paying out of pocket for certain expenses outside of tuition. And so that's also something to keep in mind. And so those are my experiences going to school at Rice. Now Paul will talk about kind of the extreme opposite from his experiences at UCSD.
Yeah, so in UCSD, it's a public school, so all the UC systems are kind of similar in a sense. So my school in UCSD had around 30,000 students of specifically only undergraduate students. So it's a pretty big school. So all my classes, especially like the general education classes, they tend to have class sizes between 60 to 200 because it's so required to have in order to graduate. And as you progress through your college career, you're going to be going to smaller and smaller classes as you more specialize in what you want to be or in what you want to study in. In a suburb beach town, because I'm in the suburbs, San Diego or La Jolla specifically, it's a suburb beach town. So it's a really, really laid back, a very wide space. So walking around is kind of like an issue a little bit here and there. So if you want to go out and eat with your friends, or if you want to go, go shopping or grocery shopping and all of that, you need a car, right? Walking is going to take, 3 times longer than how Hannah would experience walking around campus, because she's in the heart of Houston, in the heart of downtown Houston. But for me, because we're in not specifically in downtown San Diego and we're more in the laid back area, you need some sort of transportation. So you really want to worry about in the future, what kind of neighborhood you're going to be surrounding yourself in. So it's always good to always, explore the neighborhood outside of campus. And for dry campus, we're known as a dry campus. Most UCs are known to be dry campuses, which meaning, you can't have alcohol at all. And there's going to be relatively harsh consequences if you're caught with alcohol or if you're drunk at all. You get written up, or you can have, you might need to go to orientation and such. So, but college students are smart, and they can always work things around, and they tend to, they have to work around things usually. So in La Jolla, since it's a beach town, it's right next to the beach. It's a really nice neighborhood. Rent there is a little more pricier than how Houston would be a little bit, because Houston, their square footage is a lot more expensive. So living off campus or on campus and off campus living would be a little bit more pricier. Yeah, that's the difference between our universities.
All right, so work-life balance. In college, you'll probably be the busiest you've ever been before. Along with classes, you'll also be joining a lot of clubs, organizations, have more opportunities for social things with your friends. And with that, you're completely responsible for your own schedule at all times. There's no more mom or dad to wake you up. There's no, people that can't drop you off. You have to be completely responsible for your own schedule, and it's all on you. And so personally, I don't think anybody went through college without some sort of scheduled planning activity. So that can be a planner, Google Calendar, any sort of writing utensil where you can plan out your work week and your work month. I personally couldn't live without Google Calendar throughout my college years. I can't emphasize it enough. I organized every single thing that was going on in my day every week, and that really helped me keep up to date with what was going on and minimize my stress when it came to a busy work week or busy work month. Google Calendar is also synced to your phone. I'm sure all of you know that, but it really helps set alarms for when certain meetings are, where you're supposed to be. And so I highly recommend getting into a pattern or a system where you're able to really plan out your days in an efficient manner. So when you're organizing your schedule, you also want to make sure you have your priorities in mind. It can get really overwhelming and your time is only limited to 24 hours a day. And so there will be times when, there will be conflicting things with clubs, social events, or whatever it may be. Make sure you know what your priorities are and make your schedule based off of that. So you're not overwhelmed, so you're not, doing two things at once. Make sure you know what your priorities are and make an efficient schedule and you'll be all good to go.
Yeah, when you want to make your schedule, make sure you section off your personal and your free time along with the schedule of free classes, because you're going outside, you're going to be taking around 3 to 5 classes depending on like how much of workload you want. And outside of that's around 4 hours, so like 8 hours, 10 hours, 10 hours a day, 10 hours a day. But outside of that, you're gonna want, you'll want to hang out with your friends. You're gonna want to go to organizations and clubs. You're gonna want to visit. You're gonna eat dinner. Maybe you'll have to do laundry, even. All these small stuff. And even when you want to sleep, you want to section them off pretty, I'd say, liberally and rather, a little easily for yourself. And lastly, make sure you guys go to class. And if you're scheduling class times on your Google Calendar, you want to go to class. You're paying tuition for this. And you're never going to regret it. You're always going to meet friends over there. You're always going to learn new things, and you never want to procrastinate, and it's going to always bite you in the end.
So we got a question that asks, what clubs and organizations are popular? Which ones should we join in high school? Which are important for college or even join college? Do college students have mentors? So we'll definitely go more into detail about this later, but just to quickly address this question, I think there are so many clubs and organizations on campus. It's not really one or two that are popular. It's whatever fits your interest. There's cultural clubs, there's professional clubs, there's clubs that focus on, anything from cooking, fencing, any of your interests. There's so many of them at university. So I would personally say try to do what interests you. It'll help keep the stress out of your day. And there are also clubs if you want to advance your career, you want a mentor. There are a lot of clubs that focus on that as well. I think most college students do tend to have mentors, whether it be professors, it can even be upperclassmen, peers. There's so many resources for that. And so we'll dive into that a little bit, later. Paul, do you want
I think you hit it off perfectly.
Okay. All right, so moving on really quickly, I just wanted to show a sample Google Calendar schedule if how you can schedule your day. This was obviously a very, very busy week for me, but I was obsessed with color coding and organizing my days. And so here's just a quick example. I had all my classes in a certain color. I worked full-time or part-time, so I had my work on there. I had all my meetings, all my times was scheduled. Anything pretty much that I had to do, I put on this Google Calendar. I even penciled in like when I would have dinner with my friends on Wednesday night, just so I wouldn't forget because things would get so chaotic. So definitely take advantage of scheduling your days so you're not forgetting everything, you're not missing meetings. So this is just one example of how you can coordinate your day.
So social scene, if you want to find friends, finding friends is probably the most daunting task you can ever have in college. But fear no evil. There's always going to be ways of finding friends left and right. There's organizations, there's clubs, you have classes and residential living. Some orgs, you can join a fraternity or sorority, if you want to be social and you want to, get actually into like the party life and whatnot. There's clubs, there's cultural clubs that you want to go to, say if you're Korean, there's Korean American Student Association. If you're Pacific Islander, you can go to any of these. There's a million organizations and clubs like outside of cultural. Me specifically, I was really into the cultural scene. So I joined an Asian fraternity in a club, and I devote a lot of time into it so I can, have a lot of friends around that scene. And classes especially, you really want to make friends in your classes because, they're going to be, they might be your future coworkers in the future, or someone that you want to share your notes with, someone to study with. And there's also residential living, which is like, your roommates that you're going to have for the rest of the year. And you want to have good roommates. There's always going to be common spaces. And, there might be different colleges within the same university, because UCSD has 6 colleges, and depending on which college you're in, you'll be affiliating with them the most. So, yeah.
Right? And along with organizations and clubs, classes are a great way to find friends, to study with, to bond with, and all that. So make sure you're going to class again. This is really a great way to find your study group and people that will help you succeed academically as well as socially. So it'll help you in the long run. Also residential living. So there are fraternities, sororities, but my school specifically didn't have Greek life. And so there are some universities where the social scene is a bit different. My university was structured kind of like Harry Potter. You know, there's 4 houses. We had 11 houses. And so whatever house college you were in, that's pretty much your social scene. Those are all your best friends. That's who you eat with, live with, party with. And so that was kind of how our social scene was organized. So they almost forced you into friendships with your college. So that was great, honestly. Like, you didn't really have to put in that much effort into joining certain things to find friends. So definitely take into consideration your university structure. If, regardless of what the residential system is, you'll have a roommate, you'll have people on your floor, people in your building. So make sure you find friends. It's really great if you can live with your best friends as well. So that's a great way to find your friends as well. So we have a couple questions that we should maybe address really quickly before we do finding roommates. Paul, do you want to do? Okay, so we have how important is it to make upperclassmen friends? Since in high school we make upperclassmen friends to help us for future classes. I would say it's just as, if not more important, because for upperclassmen who are especially in your major, they can provide anything from like what kinds of internships to take, what kinds of jobs they did when they were your year, what kinds of classes to take. I think it's really, really important. Paul, fraternity or sorority?
So fraternity or sorority is basically it's basically it's a club. So fraternity is for guys and sorority are for girls, essentially. And to apply, it's not really it's you apply in the first week of every semester or quarter. So they'll have this thing called Rush Week, and then where you do, you attend their events, you get to know the brothers of the fraternity and the sisters of the sorority, right? And then what you would do every day, they would have a day where they do this thing. They go out together with the brothers and the rushies, and and eventually, as the week progresses, at the end of the week, that's when the fraternity and sorority actually selects the members that they want for the rest of the quarter and semester, and that's when they would have like a pledge process. And with that pledge process, you get to know the brothers slowly, and you get to know like how the system works and how you can be a potential like a really good member of the fraternity and sorority. So what's really good about having sororities and like of joining a fraternity or sorority is that you can it's all connections. It's just like how the first question that Eunice asked, and how to have upperclassmen friends. You're always going to have upperclassmen brothers, and then, or sisters, and you can always talk to them about things, and from personal to financial to career advice and to class advice. So it's a really nice way to mingle with new friends. And the best way to find like-minded groups of people in college, that comes, you never have to force yourself to do that, but as long as you have the mindset of wanting to meet new friends, you'll automatically find like-minded friends immediately. Like just talk to people, and just get to know them, and there's going to be at least 10 that are going to be like-minded as you, especially if they're in the same like college the same career going as you, or taking the same classes as you, same interests. Yeah.
And the next question is, do certain colleges require you to live in a dorm for at least a year? To the best of my knowledge, I think most universities require the first year, just so you're acquainted with people, so you're on campus. I think there are commuter students, so you don't necessarily have to, but I think it's recommended if you're going to be on campus to be in a dorm. For my university, they allowed you to stay in a dorm all 4 years, but I know for other universities, especially bigger ones, they tend to kick off people either second or third year just because there's a lack of space. But that really depends on your university.
Yeah, UCSD, because
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
In UCSD, we have so many undergraduate students. We kind of like have a housing issue. The first 2 years we're allowed to live. The first year is mandatory, but the second year is like optional if you want. But beginning in third and fourth, you're not allowed to live on campus unless you do special applications. So just be aware on the student size in each university.
And then to address Min's question, hi Min, there are co-ed dorms. I would say most universities do have co-ed dorms and they operate in that way. I think some will specify girl floor, boy floor, but for mine specifically, it was co-ed, all floors, all dorms. So most of the time the roommates will be the same, but I think there are options where you can specifically select how you want your roommates to be. So That's kind of how it works, I think. But it again depends on the university, but tends to be co-ed is what I believe.
There's
Do
no,
you recommend? Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
what's up?
Did you have something to say? Sorry.
Oh yeah, just the same with Hannah. UCSD's dorm room system is also co-ed as well. There's no separate like girls on this side of campus, guys on this side of campus. It's just like each floor there's gonna be girls and guys and whatnot.
And the next question is, do you recommend dorming as a junior, senior, or living outside of campus? I think it really does depend on what you want out of your college experience. A lot of people do move off campus just for that off-campus experience, since they just want to experience something different than dorms, and they just want to maybe live in an apartment with their friends or whatever the reason may be. I personally do recommend it for a year or two just because it's nice to separate school and home life. That's what I kind of prefer doing, where you do all your work at school and you're able to go home separately instead of being always on campus 24/7. But again, that's completely personal preference. If you want to stay all 4 years and your university permits it, 100% do that. And then, next question, do you want to answer that?
For specifically UCSD, it's hard to. Oh yeah, it's really hard to find a social life there. For that, that's a myth. That's an absolute myth. We're just known to be called UC socially dead, and everyone lives upon that stigma, but it's totally not true. Um, all you have to do is have the mindset of wanting to go out and meet new friends, and as long as you have that mindset, you'll meet so many friends. That's it. It's you can. The first week of school, like right when you enter college, you're going to be introduced to flyering week, which is basically on library walk, which is like the center of campus. It's like a long stretching road. There's going to be a lot of orgs, flyering people wanting to join their organizations and clubs. They'll be going after you, right? And they'll be going after you. They'll be wanting you to join and visit their events that they're hosting. And as long as you're willing to go out and present yourself, you'll be fine. But I would highly recommend in UCSD, if you're planning on going to UCSD, try joining some organizations or clubs, and because it'll really boost on helping you find new friends.
For the next question, are you allowed to bring a car to college? Yes, but I think what a lot of people don't know is how expensive parking can be at universities. They really don't advertise that a lot, and so make sure you're checking parking prices on campus. They can be ridiculously expensive, like thousands of dollars a year, and so make sure you know your prices if you want to bring a car. At the same time, if you don't have a car, if you don't want to bring a car, I think most universities you can get by fine without a car, so definitely don't feel pressure. Paul and I both didn't have cars all of college, so no worries about that. And then for the next question, we will talk about, are dorm mates assigned or do you get to choose? Would this depend on which school you go to? Yeah, so we'll talk about that for finding roommates. So why don't we talk about that really quickly for finding roommates? Do you want to talk about the first 2 points, Paul?
Finding roommates. I found roommates through social media, through Facebook, because there will be this UCSD like group housing group, basically, and I was just like direct messaged and if they want to live with me. So we decided to pair each other up. So there's a system where on social media where you can talk to like potential roommates that like you might fit well with each other, and then there's like the actual school survey system. So you would have to do the school survey system first, right? But then you can always opt in to like live with this one other person. Say, this guy from high school or this other friend from high school you want to live with. You can always opt in with them.
Yeah, so going off that, you can either be assigned it or you can choose. For my university, they purely assigned it. So they sent us a long questionnaire, basically with every question you can imagine, like living style, personality, anything really, and they matched you with roommates. And so this really worked out well because I didn't have to go out of my way to find somebody who would be like me or who I would like. They really did a really great job of matching those people. I'm still best friends with my freshman year roommate. And so I think it really does depend on your university. Make sure you're double checking in with them, like the system they have, what they recommend. That can range from social media, finding it yourself, or being assigned.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next slide. Sorry, last question. How would we find out about dorm housing? So could you specify that question a little more? Is it how we find out if you have dorm housing or which dorm you want to be in? But for now, we'll move on to financial responsibilities. Okay, so for financial responsibilities, we wanted to give you a quick, few insider tips when you're in college. I personally didn't know what cash apps were when I entered college. That might have been just because they were fairly new around that time, but going into college, I would highly recommend everyone download Venmo, PayPal, or any form of cash app, because in college, when you're eating out with friends, when you're paying bills, you're gonna have to have an easy way to split bills or to pay each other. And so this makes it really, really convenient. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the platforms and make sure you know how to use the apps before you get to college. Secondly, budgeting is super, super important. Again, you don't have parents to budget out for you. You'll be completely responsible for how you spend your money, how you spend your allowance, or whatever your financial circumstance. Budgeting is super important. And there are a lot of great budgeting websites or apps that you can download on your phone, but I personally just use an Excel sheet. It was super easy to track where I was spending my money, how much money I had to spend per week. It's just a great way to stay organized. And so it's less stress when you know what you can and can't afford, instead of just emptying out your bank account and being stressed if it's zero for a whole month or whatever. So make sure you're being really careful with budgeting out your money, your time, and yeah.
Try to gain your own financial independence, guys. Before even going to college, make sure you have your own bank account. Make sure it's not split or shared with your mom or dad. And you don't want to see, you want to be able to have fun as much as you can. You want to go to your own festival or events in the future. You want to go to Coachella, and your mom's gonna, and if you have a shared account, you're gonna ask why you spend $500 on a ticket to this one event, whatnot. You don't want to deal with that kind of stuff, right? You want to be this college is a stage where you learn how to be yourself and you learn how to take care of yourself. So you want to ask your parents to ask your own bank account, and yeah. So you don't, yeah. For etiquette when paying with friends, essentially what you want to do is pay them on time. You're going to be, when you live off campus, or you share food with friends, you're going to be, someone's going to be fronting the bill, which is, one person pays for all of this. And what you want to do is pay on time, pay timely. And because you're going to be doing this so much, you don't want to be known as the person that pays 2 months later when you're supposed to pay rent 30 seconds, right? So just make sure you stay on top of your payments, even in credit cards, even in Venmo payments, even in PayPal payments. Just pay on time.
So with that, we're going to be talking about working in school.
So working in school, I worked on an on-campus job, and I worked on campus because I needed some extra cash, but along with the bigger reason why I wanted to work on campus was because of work-study benefits. So work-study benefits is a way for students to earn money to pay for school through for part-time and sometimes off-campus jobs. And the program is federal, right? So the program gives students an opportunity to gain valuable work experience while pursuing a college degree. So they'll really be really lenient if people with jobs that accept work study, they'll be really lenient with the classes you're taking because they know that you're a student. But however, be careful, because not every school participates in this federal work study program. So in my 4 years of college, I was awarded around $2,000 to $4,000 a year on federal work study. So whenever I would work, I would gain $4,000. I would go and pay for my tuition while I worked. So I get $2,000 to $4,000 depending on how much I get. And on top of that, I'll get my hourly wage.
Yeah, so I also had work study all 4 years, and I worked all 4 years of college. I worked at the same job as a front desk receptionist, and I would highly recommend finding desk jobs especially on campus, because a lot of them understand that you're students. And for my job specifically, if I didn't have any work to do, I was allowed to do homework. I was able to chill out, do whatever I wanted at the desk. And so it was a very laid back way of earning money while doing homework, while catching up with school. And there are a lot of positions like that on campus. And so if you're looking for a job, I highly recommend either, librarian, front desk, receptionist, any kind of desk job. They tend to be more lenient with that kind of stuff. And so I think that kind of addresses one of the questions we got about what are some good jobs to apply for in college. Definitely, I would say desk jobs are easiest for college students just because you're making money and you're also doing homework. And so that's a great way to do an on-campus job. But there's a lot of different jobs on campus. You can work at, the cafeteria, I think. You can work at bookstore, a lot of different opportunities. So, I think they have a job board at all times on their student website, student portal. And so always keep up with the updates, the job openings, and you should be able to find a job no problem, especially if you have work study. And then for off-campus jobs, This is a bit more difficult as you're moving from, campus, you're coming back and forth, especially if you don't have a car, it might be more difficult to have an off-campus job. But if you do have a car, make sure you're being responsible with your time. It can take a lot of time to go back and forth from jobs. And so make sure you're really organized, stay on top of your schedule, and take into consideration transportation. Personally, I had an off-campus internship, and that was only possible because I lived in Houston and it had a great public transportation system where I could go back and forth pretty easily. But if you're, maybe in a suburb or in an area where there's not a lot of great public transportation and you don't have a car, it might be more difficult to have an off-campus job. So definitely take into consideration your limitations, your resources, what's around you when you take an off-campus job. Yeah, and the second part of the question was, what are some jobs we should start in high school to be able to support ourselves? That's pretty much, anything you can. Any sort of cash is great for college. Every dollar counts. I would say any job that you want. I personally tutored in high school. Paul, did you have any high school jobs?
I worked under my brother and my brother-in-law, so essentially I just lingered with my siblings and stuff like that. But essentially, it doesn't really matter what job you get, and you don't really need to worry about that. It's just you just put that experience on your resume in the future. So it just all depends on yourself. I just work at Subway, anywhere you want. It's nice.
And then to answer the second part of Nikki's question, how do you find places that are affordable and close to university for college students? I would say all universities have like a housing portal or some sort of Facebook page that shows housing around the area because they know that students are looking for housing around the university. So definitely make sure you access those resources. They will list out, I think, apartments, available housing for students generally. And so if you keep your eye out for that, you should be aware of what's going on around campus. I would say most college campuses do tend to have more affordable housing because they know that students are paying for it, but at the same time, some universities may not have access to the surrounding areas and private landlords might jack up the price. My university did that a little bit where the surrounding area, the landlords made it more expensive because they knew students would be willing to pay more for the location. And so it really does depend on the city you're in, what kind of school you're at. So it's very, very specific to your area.
Yeah.
College resources.
So there's gonna be a million of college resources for you guys. Every college campus, you're gonna have common resources for like health, well-being. There's women's resources. There's a gym, career center, financial aid office, all of that stuff. As long as there's going to be all of these like on this bullet point list, and they're all for you, right? They're for every single student. Make sure you know where you guys can reach out to these places. Like whenever you guys have a question, you can literally just go online, search it up. There's always going to be the website or the portal link for these resources. And if you live on campus and it's really close, you can always just go to any of these like resources at all like you want.
Yeah, and for jobs, the path to finding jobs and internships may vary depending on what you major in or what you want your career path to be. Some people, if you want to be in investment banking, you have to start looking really early, like sophomore year, versus other people, you may not need a job or internship to be where you want to be. So it really does depend on what you want to do in your major, but I would say it's never too early to start. I think it's better to be earlier and looking for things rather than waiting last minute for a job or internship if you want one. As soon as you hit college, I would say keep your ears open for any job and opportunity you might have for summer vacation, winter break, anything there is. Make sure you're paying attention instead of just ignoring it and being like, oh, I can do it junior year, senior year. I think the earlier the better is probably the best advice I have. And go to your career fair. I think that a lot of people kind of brush it off until later, but I think when you're a freshman or sophomore, it really does help to see what kinds of opportunities are out there for people that are straight, upperclassmen that are going to be graduating, what kinds of opportunities are out there for them. So it can really help you shape what you want out of your college career. So make sure you're going to the career fair, talking to your professors. And again, we mentioned mentors before, but that can be anyone. That can be an upperclassman, that can be a professor, anyone that can help you make decisions about what you want for your career or your major. Anyone you could talk to, always talk to them. And I think my favorite thing to do was reaching out to upperclassmen in my major, especially when I was a freshman, when I didn't really know what kinds of jobs or internships to take. It really helped to talk to people who were in my steps just a few years back and to hear what kinds of jobs they took. And so definitely reach out to upperclassmen and see what they did, what they were looking into, what resources they have. That helps a lot. And I would say, sorry, excuse me, apply to as many positions as possible. Don't be afraid that you're not as qualified for a certain position, or don't be afraid that you don't really know much about a certain position. Just apply, just see what's out there. And rejections never hurt you. The more you get rejections, the easier it'll be every time, and you just won't be fazed by them. And so just apply to as many things as possible. And in the process, make sure you're expanding your network. You're making networks wherever you go. Your peers will be your network. Your upperclassmen, everyone's going to be a source of network for you. So make sure you're always looking for opportunities, having your ear out again. And yeah. So really quickly, we'll address some of the questions again. How do meal plans work? Again, this varies by university. My university, it was where you paid for a meal plan that was pretty set, and it was unlimited, like a buffet style, where if you swiped in, you can get as much food as you want, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But I think Paul's is extremely different. So.
Mine, for UCSD, we have these things called dining dollars. So essentially, you would deposit a certain amount of money, a certain amount of meal plan. So you get, $2,700, and you put in there, and you get $2,700 dining dollars, and you can only use those dining dollars on campus. So you can use it on any dining hall you wanted. So if you wanted a pizza, it'd be like $2, and if you wanted salad, that's another dollar. And like if you wanted a full meal, it's $8. So the more things you put on your plate, the more expensive it'll be. And basically, you would teach yourself on how to like save money, essentially through dining dollars. But dining dollars is pretty tough.
And then how is the food at colleges? How does the system work for buying food? I've heard of swipes. Yes, he just explained swipes, but how is the food? I think it depends on the school. I think if you look up like niche or anything, they'll talk about food quality. Some universities have it a lot better than others, but overall, it's not going to be like great 5-star restaurant food. But I think it's edible. It'll keep you alive. So yeah, don't worry about that. Paul, anything to add?
Other colleges have better food than the others, so
Yeah.
keep that in mind. Make sure you ask everyone which college has the best food.
Yeah, I think that's just word of mouth mostly too. Just ask people that you know that go there if the food is good or not. It really depends.
Even then, if you're on campus, you can always go off campus to go eat. That's great.
Great. So academic help, we're just going to breeze through since we're running out of time a little bit. So we're going to be talking about how, we both had a pretty difficult decision with major choices. I came in, again, STEM, math, economics, and then I changed to political science, social policy analysis. And that was a really difficult, scary decision because, that's a huge decision. That's like what's on paper for the rest of your life. And so I just want to say it's okay to change your mind. It's totally okay if you come in thinking you're going to be one thing and all of a sudden switch out or you want to do something else. It's never too late. So, if you're having an identity crisis, it's okay. Everyone does in college, especially after the first year. Everybody does. So don't worry about that when it comes to your major change. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, if you're always unsure about what you want to be in the future, you can always speak with major advisors, or you can always talk to your upperclassmen and even your friends, your family, your parents, they'll always be your back. They'll always have your back. You can always explore a wide variety of courses to find what interests you. Like you can take, introductory classes to this one major, say you're interested in biology or chemistry, there's Chem 1, or Bio 1, or if you're going to do oceanography, there's Oceanography 1. You can always check out these one classes. It's simple. It should be laid back. It teaches you a lot of stuff, and they're always going to be big classes. So there's always going to be a lot of people in them. And then in that class, you'll see maybe a lot of familiar faces, and you can actually get to mingle with them. But yeah, and when you're struggling academically, you're bound to be struggling academically. High school is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, or it's going to be a curve compared to college. So some tips for you guys is to make some friends in class. I know we've said that in like 10 slides already, but make some friends in class. And secondly, make a schedule and follow it. Don't put too much work on your schedule. Don't try not to follow a really strict and heavy schedule. Be at ease with it. And there's always going to be peer tutors and mentors. There's always going to be supplemental help anywhere you go. So just make sure, as long as you know where the resources are, it'll be fine.
Yeah, so every class, especially bigger classes, will have TAs or teaching assistants, and these are students that help the professor grade, help with homework, help with content, and so they'll host TA sessions, and that's where you can kind of ask the TA certain questions you didn't understand in class, ask for homework help if you're a bit intimidated by the professor. But at the same time, you can always reach out to the professor. They love one-on-one interactions, so don't be scared, always reach out. And then we'd also recommend going beyond the class, which means, sometimes you have professors that may not be explaining certain topics in a way that makes it easy or accessible for you, and that's okay. There's so many online resources that help with that. We use like Check, Khan Academy, YouTube videos. There's so much out there that helps supplement your learning in courses. So always make sure you're Googling certain things if you're unsure, instead of being stuck and narrowed down in just what your professor is teaching within your course.
Google is your best friend, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so before we move on to our final slide, we have some questions. What majors are the most popular? That's super, super dependent on the university, I would say. I think most colleges have sort of a reputation for what most students go for or what they're known for, and that's mainly because of the number of students that maybe major at a certain school. I think for my university, economics and computer science are probably the most popular majors. I think UCSD maybe have the same different.
UCSD is very STEM heavy as well. We're heavy to CS and the bio and chemistry industry. So yeah, we're all STEM.
Right, but versus like smaller, maybe liberal arts schools would be more focused on humanities, social sciences. So it really depends on the university, I would say. Are there any unexpected expenses besides food, tuition? Yeah, because you're a student, you'll be spending money on weekends. There's going to be a lot of, I would say, unexpected expenses. So definitely budgeting for that. I can't think of any specifics right now.
There's going to be facilities expenses because you're going to be using the entire campus and it's going to be available to you at all times. So there's going to be like gyms and such like that. So my gym in UCSD, every student has to pay $100 every quarter for it. So I was like, I might as well use this gym. So aside of that, like any official expenses, I'd say, just expect the biggest expense you'll probably have besides tuition and food is fun tuition, which is, or not fun, like fun expenses. You're just going to have a lot of, you're going to go out every weekend here. So, you're going to have money or just to go eat, have fun, explore. So just always have enough side cash for yourself to have fun.
And then, okay. So if we go a little bit over time limit, which we might be, but that's okay. If you want to stay, stay. If you need to leave, no problem at all. And then I would say for unexpected expense, just one more thing. Think about, maybe something breaks, your phone breaks, your iPhone breaks, or sorry, your MacBook breaks or your laptop breaks. Like, I think that's a very unexpected, very expensive thing that can happen very often in college, and it happens to a lot of us. So definitely make sure you have an emergency expense for anything like that can happen. Or maybe you're super sick and you need to call an ambulance or something like that, and insurance doesn't cover it. There's a lot of things that can happen, so that's something to keep in mind as well. What are some questions we should ask potential roommates before committing to housing with them? Do you want to take that one?
What are some questions to ask potential roommates? I guess get to know where they're from. I mean, honestly, to start off, to break the ice a little bit, just ask where they're from, ask what they do for fun, their hobbies. You can ask what they're like. The biggest important thing I'd say was how heavy of a sleeper are you, and two, how late do you sleep? Because that's like literally almost half the time, like the majority of the time you're gonna be with them, right? You're gonna be sleeping next to them and stuff. So you want to be wary of that. You want to respect their sleeping schedules and their habits. And is college No, I was terrified when I was about to go to college. I did not know what was gonna happen. I didn't know what classes were gonna be. I didn't know how I was gonna make friends. If my roommates are gonna be cool. If I'll even have a good time there. But it's not scary at all. It's gonna be scary, I guess, like before you even go. But once you enter, it's just gonna be super exciting. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I moved out of state and I didn't know a single person at my university. I didn't know anybody was going there. I was terrified, but I think the second you hit campus, it's just living. You're just instinct at that point. You're not scared at all. I know it's scary to think about it before, it's almost like, before you speak for a presentation, you're terrified right before, but then the moment you start speaking, it's kind of like, it's not bad. It's exactly like that. And you'll be having way too much fun to be scared at any point. It's honestly so much fun. So don't be worried, don't be scared. But at the same time, we understand those emotions as well.
Yeah, we might
Is
be
it
talking about scheduling. We might be talking about finances right now. We might be talking about, scheduling and all that and all those classes. But, it's going to be the best 4 years of your life if you ever try to attend college.
and is it smart to dorm with your best friend? I heard it might not go so well. I think it depends, really.
Yeah.
I think there are both. There are cases where it works out super well and they're like friends for life. And I think there are cases where that leads to a bit of tension. I think it, more so than friendship, it depends on living style. I think if you guys have a compatible living style, it's totally fine to live with your best friend. But if there are a lot of differences where, your friendship didn't recognize certain living style differences, it might be difficult. But yeah, it really depends on the level of friendship, I guess, and the level of comfortability with living styles.
I would say live outside, live without them for a year or so. Lean towards not living with them because you want to, meet new people, and two, you kind of want to, have your own space and kind of grow out from your best friend. Because even if you are gonna be with your best friend in college, you can always, hang out with them in their dorm, and it might be super close by. So, so it's gonna be a win-win situation if you do live with them or don't live with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Try not to cling on to your high school friends if you do
Yeah,
go to college because there's so many people. So definitely try to branch out.
yeah.
Okay, and so this is our last slide, which we'll quickly try to go through. These are some unexpected things that nobody really talks about. They're kind of taboo topics, but we wanted to bring it up just to be as honest as possible with the true full college experience. And so if anybody's uncomfortable at any point, no worries, you can mute us, anything. But if you have any questions about these topics, again, don't be shy. We're here as a resource for you and to be as honest as possible. So kind of the first thing I noticed and I was surprised by were racial biases or concept of privilege. I think in high school, it's really easy to be in this little bubble of thinking. You're surrounded by the same friends you've probably knew for years. And, you really don't think about things like socioeconomic background, like racial background as much in high school as you do in college. There will come a point where you'll talk about really difficult topics in your courses or with your peers about racism, sexism, privilege, and that just comes with the liberal education that comes with college, where you're critically thinking more about society and like the people we live with. For me personally, I remember my freshman sophomore year, I was having a really hard time finding jobs and internships, and I was applying to like 40 jobs. I was applying online, doing everything I could, but it wasn't working out. Versus I saw like some of my peers who, didn't even apply, had their parents give them a job or had their parents, sign them up for an internship. And so I remember being so shocked that that was some people's lifestyles and that I couldn't have that. And so those kind of differences are something you may be aware of. But at the same time, we do have a lot of privilege just going to college in itself. There are a lot of people who don't have that privilege. And so with the opportunities you're given, just try to make the best of what you do have and don't focus too much on other people's successes or support networks. It's you got to make the most of what you have, and so that's kind of one of the biggest lessons I learned in college, along with the things you notice about privilege and background as well. And I would also say, I'm sure this also applies to high school, but cliques are very quickly formed in institutions. In college, it's really easy to form cliques and social groups based on people who look the same as you, think the same way as you. But because you're surrounded by so many different people, I would really urge you guys to branch out of that, branch out of people who you normally maybe would associate with. If you're in an all Asian friend group, maybe try to make friends of different backgrounds when you're in classes, or make sure you're having those different social spheres so you're not sticking to just one thing again, is what I would say about that.
The next common theme would be drugs. So in college, you're always going to be exposed to drugs, no matter left and right. You might be introduced to weed, marijuana. Maybe some of you guys smoke, maybe you guys don't right now. But if you're ever exposed to them, make sure you do them in the best practices possible, right? You might be introduced to harder drugs left and right. You might be exposed to, say, I'm going to be honest with you here. It's going to be on like you're going to be introduced to these things called like cocaine or like Molly or ecstasy and all these weird stuff, right? But if you're exposed to them, make sure you do them well. Make sure not do them well. Don't make sure you test them and make sure you do it safely. Make sure you do them with good friends, right? And if you're exploratory, if you're feeling adventurous and you want to try them, make sure you do it safely and make sure you do it in a good space, right? Don't do it with random people. And if you ever, have like a weird drug you never heard of, don't take it. Test it first. Safety comes first. And lastly, you can always say no. People are always going to peer pressure you. Peer pressure is going to be huge in college, and you can always just say no. Okay.
Yeah. And so hookup culture, I think you know, when you're entering college, you don't have your parents around, you have your own space, there's a lot of attractive new people. It can get really easy to wrapped up in this culture of, you know, hooking up and being very open with your sexuality, which is totally fine. But as long as you know where your resources are, college probably has, you know, an infinite supply of condoms and free resources for anything related to sexual health. And so make sure you're stocking up, make sure you're safe. There's condoms everywhere from your health center to your RAs in your dorms. So make sure you know where all these resources are if you ever do need them. Always get STI tested. That's a huge one. When you put a bunch of young kids into one place, stuff spreads fast. And so make sure you're always being safe and getting tested consistently if you're active sexually. And then lastly, and most importantly, you always want to make sure you get consent. Always. I think it's going to be very emphasized in your first week and throughout your college experience, but make sure that's really ingrained in you. Consent is always necessary, especially, you know, if you're going to be engaging in certain activities, make sure it's both parties consent.
And for mental health awareness, I'm sure you guys already know, but college is extremely difficult, but at the same time, it's very rewarding and it's going to be very fun. You know, I don't regret any last 4 years of college I've had. And take care of yourself first. You know, among all other things, you know, everyone's going to consider grades as first. Everyone's going to consider, hang out with friends first, classes first, you know, but honestly, it all boils down to yourself. So make sure you always just, you know, mentally and physically take care of yourself and just be healthy. Hannah, do you want to talk about imposter syndrome real quick?
Yeah, I remember especially my first year, I had a really difficult case of imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what that just means when you feel like you don't belong or you feel like you don't have the right to be in a certain place. So I felt like I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't doing enough for my university. And that really afflicted me a lot my freshman year. But I think the more comfortable you get, the more you recognize you're accepted for a reason because your university thought you'd succeed and you will succeed. And so if you ever have those feelings, just take a deep breath. You're there for a reason. Just take everything step by step and it'll all work out. And most importantly, enjoy college. It's not scary, as we mentioned. It's so much fun. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask us. I think that's the end of our presentation. Yeah. Thank you.
You guys